Happy Friday, Cadaver Crew.
Yeah. Hope you had a good week.
Yeah, we got case file 15 coming for you.
Oh, yeah, that marks episode 30.
30. Yeah, that is true.
Yeah, we're doing double time here at the Cadaver Lessons.
All right, welcome, Cadaver Crew.
Get your dark little minds right and settle in.
Class is in session, and the cadaver is already on the table.
I'm B.
And I'm Sam.
And this is the Cadaver's Files. Okay, so off of our hand washing episode, remember that? Where we all questioned all of our life's decisions?
Yes.
So, we're going to talk about a case, and this could have gone with a totally different main episode topic, but I chose to do it with hand washing because it's probably the most famous hand washing case in the United States, at least.
I've never heard the story of Typhoid Mary. I have no idea what's coming.
Yes, Typhoid Mary is who we're going to talk about, and I'm interested to see what you think.
Yeah, let's go.
All right, so who is this Typhoid Mary who's super popular and everybody's heard of her in the United States? Well, her real name is Mary Mallon, and she was born in Cookstown, Ireland in 1869.
Okay.
She immigrated to the United States, like many do, in 1883 at the age of 15 on the steamship Ethiopia.
That's a famous one, isn't it?
I think so.
I think so. It sounds too familiar.
Sounds like it should be famous.
Yeah.
So upon arriving in New York City, she first lived with her aunt, which was very common to come and live with a relative and then start work. She was employed as a private cook with multiple wealthy New York families. She had a good reputation for her work, and she earned pretty good wages for being an immigrant, coming over and being a cook.
Sounds like not the worst job you could have as an immigrant coming over, you know?
In that time, there was many worse jobs.
Yeah.
But she kind of had a good in, and she was good at her job.
Good for her.
So most likely her career path caused her to switch between live-in situations and living with friends while working with an employer.
Yeah. Would you ever do a live-in job?
No.
I don't think so either. Too many horror stories about that, right? Like, that's how all good horror movies start.
Yeah. I'm not for that. I don't want to live in somebody else's house.
No. B and I at one point considered getting an au pair because it's actually cheaper than most childcare options in the United States. And I would love for someone to be like a part of our family, you know, and to really feel like you were building that relationship. But on the flip side of that, you also have to integrate them into your society, which I totally agree with. But hear me out, girly pop. On my day off, I don't want to.
I don't even want to be in society.
Yeah. And so just thinking like somebody's living in that I'm supposed to be responsible for making their time worth it here, which it absolutely should be that way. Yeah. 100%. I just can't do it.
Yeah, I can't. I just can't. Had too many roommates. I don't want to do that no more.
Yeah.
Besides you can be my roommate.
Roommate phase, question mark?
Nah. So most likely her employment was also limited being a immigrant, one of Irish descent, especially because they were extreme bias against Irish immigrants, and she was unmarried.
Yeah, nobody likes an unmarried woman.
Yep, they cause all kinds of trouble.
Lobotomy.
And she also just had very little to her name because she wasn't coming from a wealthy family. The whole reason she came over was to work.
Yeah.
And so why does this Irish cook become so famous so quickly? Well, between 1897 and 1906, Mallon worked for several families, and throughout this time, 4 members of these families contracted typhoid fever.
Seems like there's a denominator.
Right.
Yeah.
For the first 3 years, she cooked for a family in Mamaroneck, New York. No one in the family or staff contracted typhoid fever during that time. However, a guest became ill in 1900, 10 days after he arrived to stay with the family.
But like, was he traveling? Could he have contracted it from his travels?
He was coming from East Hampton, where there had been a recent typhoid outbreak.
Okay, so not convinced.
That's one of the data points that they're marking here.
Okay.
Was this. From 1901 to 1902, she worked for a family in New York for a short time, and during that time, the family's laundress trekked into the hospital with typhoid.
Was she cooking for the laundress? Or is she just like, do you really think whatever family she's cooking for is that kind that they're also feeding the person that's doing their laundry?
Could be. Family meals could include, as long as
Seems
she's
unlikely.
touching in the same area.
Yeah. I'm a little skeptical, I won't lie.
So, just so we get an understanding of how this is spreading, can you tell us how fever is spread?
Yeah, so it's typically the fecal oral route. So it's caused by bacteria called Salmonella typhi bacteria and transmitted via food or water. So it spreads through food or water contaminated by the feces or urine of an infected person or carrier. But of note, if it's untreated, it can stick around for over a month. So it's a really long time for it to stick for some of these people that are coming in and it not have been caused by anything else, you know?
Yeah, so think about that fecal oral route and you have your cook, right? So that's what we're kind of trying to figure out the data points here. And so after working for this family who the laundress got typhoid, she worked for J. Coleman Drayton. And during that time, 4 family members and 5 staff members became ill.
Now that's a lot.
It's a lot. Only Drayton himself and Mallon were not affected.
Yeah, that's my question. Isn't at some point, are you questioning, is she affected or is she poor, unmarried, Irish immigrant woman? And so she's not telling people she's sick at all, you know, so that she doesn't lose her wages.
I guess we'll have to read on.
Oh, okay, okay.
Investigators believed it was actually the footman of the house who carried the typhoid and got everybody sick, not originally Mary.
Okay.
And then in 1904, Milan was cooking for Henry Gilsey, and 4 members of the staff who lived separate from the family became ill, and none of the family did.
Was this one of her live-in situations?
Unclear.
You know, I feel like there's some key points.
Yeah, I know. Another investigator believed that the laundress was the source, but could not prove it. It's not like she's the only one
that could possibly carry typhoid.
Right.
Yeah.
Then in 1906, here's our turning point. Milan worked as a cook for Charles Henry Warren, a famous New York banker. She traveled with them to the summer house that they rented in Oyster Bay from property owner George Thompson. So George Thompson owned this house. She went with the family, live-in situation, cooked for them in Oyster Bay. 6 people in the household of 11 became sick with typhoid.
More than half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Thompson, who owned the property, was worried that he wouldn't be able to rent, so he hired New York City Department of Health sanitary engineer George Soper. Now this guy,
oh boy,
he takes his job seriously.
Maybe he should.
So George Soper specialized in studying typhoid fever epidemics. He was notably called an epidemic fighter.
Okay, you're making a joke, but how many epidemics have not been well documented, treated, communicated, all of those things that we've been talking shit about now for 15 weeks?
I know. It's just like, choose your fighter. George Soper. That's who you're going to choose.
Yeah.
Other investigators were also brought in and concluded that the outbreak was likely due to contaminated water, but Soper was suspicious of one person particular.
Let me take a guess that her name is Mary.
Her name was Mary, and she had left the house 3 weeks after the outbreak. Connected?
But I mean, if the water's already contaminated and they're treating that at the same time, still skeptical.
So she continued to work as a cook until 1907, and during that year, she was working at a Park Avenue home in Manhattan for Walter Bowen. Now, this is where it gets sad. His daughter contracted typhoid and died.
Man, that's sad.
Yeah, young daughter. And at the time, Lon herself was 37 years old. And here's a description that our good old boy Soper describes her as. 5 feet 6 inches tall, blonde with clear blue eyes, a healthy color, and somewhat determined mouth and jaw.
Not determined and not like undetermined, just somewhat determined mouth and jaw. Get out of here.
So vague. So he eventually tried to confront Mary and asked her for some urine and fecal samples. And when he did that, she was not happy. And so she actually lunged at him with a carving fork.
Yeah. I mean, I can kind of get it though, because this is her livelihood is cooking and has been now for 22 years since she immigrated from Ireland, and she's still unmarried and she has no other career other than this. So, say they happen to find something in her urine and stool that she truly didn't believe she had, or maybe knew she had, but like I said, this was the only way of her providing for herself. I can understand being so mad at, like, I'm about to lose everything.
Yeah.
I don't
And
mean that I don't, that doesn't make it right, right?
and he wasn't coming in there being like,
Damn.
ma'am, do you mind if we
Yeah.
do some tests? We believe you may be sick. He's probably coming in there like, you killing people. You've caused this whole epidemic. We need to test you right now. So here's another quote from Soper about how Mary reacted to him asking for some samples. It did not take Mary long to react to this suggestion. She seized a carving fork and advanced in my direction. I passed rapidly down the long, narrow hall, through the tall iron gate, and out through the area, and so the sidewalk. I felt rather lucky to escape.
This feels like a Colleen Hoover novel paragraph.
Felt lucky to escape.
Yeah, get out of here.
So scared of this woman with a carving, like,
Get out of
fork,
here.
the carving fork.
Yeah.
I thought you were supposed to be
An investigator.
an investigator.
Yeah.
I thought you were the fighter.
Yeah, the epidemic fighter.
So, another character in this story, Dr. Josephine Baker, an up-and-coming advocate of hygiene and public health, also tried to convince Mallon to provide samples, but was chased away as well. She was like, I'm not going to give you samples in a hospital. Also, hospitals are scary, and probably most people don't want to go there because they could get sick.
Yeah, they could get typhoid fever.
Baker, whose father had died from typhoid actually, later made it her mission to promote preventative medicine.
I mean, she's taken this personally.
Yeah, this is more than just, I need some samples. She's taking it very personally since her father died of typhoid.
Yeah, yeah.
She actually became the first woman to earn a doctorate in public health.
No way. That's
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah. And then when she wrote about Milan, this is what she had to say. It was Mary's tragedy that she could not trust us. So I think she's really saying here, Mary didn't trust them, so she couldn't receive any help from them. And so Dr. Baker here, she's like, if she would have trusted us, we could have worked something out.
Yeah, she could have gotten treatment if she did have it. And if she didn't have it, she could have had her name cleared.
Right. So we had to do it by force.
No.
March 20th, 1907, Baker and 5 policemen eventually escorted Mary to the hospital for testing.
And so when you say by force, did they say you can't leave this hospital until
They arrested her, basically.
you provide the sample, or did they like forcefully straight cath her?
I don't know about that.
Okay.
I mean,
That's a
she would have
force-
had to pee and have a bowel movement eventually.
Yeah.
Over several months, her stool was tested 3 times a week and showed the presence of Bacillus typhosus.
Why did they have to test 3 times a week? Like, obviously 2 days ago, if it was positive, it's going to be positive now.
I think it was because she had no symptoms.
Okay.
She wasn't presenting with any symptoms at all, so they kept her there for months and tested her.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, kind of. Like, imagine being held against your will in a hospital for testing. So the condition was resistant to drug treatments, and Milan refused to remove her gallbladder, in which the typhoid bacillus is stored.
Never knew it was stored there.
Yeah, so apparently if you remove your gallbladder, it would have prevented her from spreading it.
You know, in the 1900s, I probably don't want my gallbladder removed either.
Yeah, especially in a country you're not from.
Yeah.
Right?
In a place that arrested you and has been testing you for months. You have no trust in this medical system anymore.
Yeah. She eventually tried to flee the hospital stay, but she was eventually caught and committed to isolation on North Brother Island, New York, in a small house on the grounds of Riverside Hospital.
Seems a little serious.
Yeah.
Put her in isolation for this?
Yes. So she was essentially isolated on an island. Though she could walk the grounds, she was basically in her own house by herself.
And way to live your life.
No. While held, she made multiple complaints and appeals. In a letter to her lawyer, she wrote, I have been in fact a peep show for everybody. Even the interns had come to see me and ask about the facts already known to the whole wide world. The tuberculosis men would say, there she is, the kidnapped woman.
I mean, you are kidnapped.
Yeah.
100% you are kidnapped.
Right. In 1909, she sued the New York City Department of Health, and the case was brought to the Supreme Court, causing a debate about an individual's autonomy and the state's responsibility in a public health crisis. And the court denied her.
Really? How can you deny that?
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. I get it if she was really spreading this to these people and this young girl died because of it. But also if she's asymptomatic and like I remind people all the time, I can't if someone says no to testing and they can understand the risks and benefits of it, there's nothing I can do about that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So she stayed on North Brother Island till 1910, when the health department released her on the condition that she would never gain employment in handling food again.
You mean the only thing she's trained in?
Right. So then she was given a job in a laundry, and you know that shit sucked.
Yeah.
If you had to choose between cooking and doing laundry,
I don't know. I might choose laundry. I hate cooking.
not that kind of laundry. In a laundry, hot boiling water, chemicals.
Yeah. I don't know, Bernie. I hate cooking.
Yeah, you might choose differently than most.
Yeah.
So by November 1914, the Department of Health had lost track of her. She had disappeared.
Oh, they're obviously real worried about her.
Yeah, it is possible that she was cooking during this time and may be linked to other outbreaks, but there's no solid proof of that at all until 1915.
Oh boy.
And then another epidemic broke out at a sanatorium in Newfoundland, New Jersey, and at Siloam Maternity Hospital in Manhattan, where 25 people had contracted typhoid and 2 people died. Malone was going under an assumed name as Miss Brown, worked as a cook in both places, and Soper was on her trail again.
He said, I will get you this time.
Yeah, I'll get you for good this time. Eventually, she was found in a suburban home in Westchester County, New York, and was returned to North Brother Island. She remained there the rest of her life.
Seems like, I mean, I get it. Again, she did the one thing she wasn't supposed to do, and she knew she wasn't supposed to do it, which is why she changed her name. You know, like, I get it. For the rest of her life, come on.
Come on now.
I guess she did break the rules.
Yeah, but breaking a rule like that.
I just feel like you have to, it's so hard because if she really is transmitting this from person to person and people are dying because of her, that's hard, right? But also she has to make a way to make a living for herself. You can't take away the only way she knows how to pay for things, you know?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So she actually got a job in the hospital on the grounds as a laboratory assistant. And she kind of did some odd jobs around the hospital laboratory, helping with tests and cleaning equipment and things like that. But in 1932, she suffered a paralytic stroke and slowly died 6 years later.
Man, that's a hard way to die.
Yeah.
Hard way.
So let me tell you some shocking facts about this. Number 1, like we said, she never had any symptoms of typhoid. And she did not believe she had it or that she could be spreading it.
Yeah.
She was like, I'm not sick. I'm not spreading it. And we have to remember, this is early 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like hygiene and germ theory are super popular to the masses. Most people probably don't believe that they can transfer.
People
Some
still don't now. Yeah.
don't believe that they could possibly be transferring illness, even with fecal matter. So it's likely she never understood the meaning of what an asymptomatic carrier was.
And that's hard for people to know now. I think I have a coworker who, unfortunately, his daughter was born with cystic fibrosis. And yes, he works in the medical field, but they never would have known that him and his wife were carriers of cystic fibrosis, except for they were the one in, he told me the odds of this, and it's ridiculous. The one in whatever chance that they have something that happens because of it. And so it's even hard for people to understand that now, even when we have genetic testing that says, this is what this means,
Mm-hmm. And so how also does something spread like that when you're a cook? Because you get something to a very hot point that will kill off most things, right? So it is theorized that she passed along the typhoid germs by not vigorously scrubbing her hands before handling food. But usually the elevated temperature would have killed the bacteria, so most of her dishes probably would have been safe.
Yeah, I guess, unless you're making a sauce or something, right? And you're not heating that sauce up.
I guess it depends on what kind of sauce, because it is gravy.
Yeah, okay. I know, but a dressing, right?
Oh, yeah.
I guess that's what I was thinking about. And so not all foods are cooked in boiling water.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they pinpoint, Soper here truly believes that the particular dish that caused the spread of most of her.
Tell me it's potato salad.
No, it's
Oh.
not. Potato salad was a popular dish that she was famous for within the families that she cooked for. And it was ice cream and raw peaches cut up and frozen inside the ice
Yeah. She would never have to boil any of that.
cream. Right.
Yeah.
Mary Mallon was the first asymptomatic carrier of typhoid identified in the United States.
And I want you guys to hear two keywords in there: asymptomatic carrier and identified, right? Because if people don't have symptoms, they're typically not going to get tested. So was she probably really the first asymptomatic carrier? No, it's the fact that she was asymptomatic and had all of these cases and actually got identified.
Yeah, I mean, it's because she was working for famous New York people.
Yeah.
And so they were getting sick, and that's why she was pinpointed.
Yeah.
It's estimated up to 57 cases of typhoid and 3 deaths were connected to her.
That's a lot.
Yes, but it's not the most.
What do you mean by that?
Let me tell you. Let me have some facts and data for you here. So, she was not the only asymptomatic carrier, as you said, identified at this time, but she was the only one to be confined indefinitely.
Yeah. Yeah. Shitty.
Yeah. So another carrier, Frederick Morsch, worked as a confectioner, sugar man, and was only confined to North Brother Island for 9 years and then was given a job at a hospital after.
Okay. You said only 9 years. That's a long time to be confined.
It is. But it's
I know in comparison, yes.
shorter than the 26 years that Mary spent.
Yeah.
In another case, Tony Labella, who was responsible for 87 cases and 2 deaths, he evaded the Department of Health's restriction and caused an additional 35 cases and 3 deaths. He was then offered assistance to find work outside the food industry.
So we're pinpointing her because she's an immigrant?
She's a female immigrant.
Yeah.
Yeah. These are also immigrants.
So more so that she's a female.
Yeah. So why was she chosen to be the Typhoid Mary, to be on posters, multiple drawings, news articles calling her Typhoid Mary? Beware of the cooks in your house. Like, beware of not washing your hands and people not,
Yeah.
The media went insane.
I mean, they had something interesting to talk about and something to create fear within the general public. So of course it did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that dubbed her Typhoid Mary.
And people love a name.
Yep. And that really created a image of Mary that she was some type of diseased social pariah that was going around spreading her sickness everywhere.
On purpose.
On purpose. That she was this awful person.
In fact, she was wiping with her hands and then going and cooking with those hands.
Right. On purpose, getting people sick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so people had this image of her, and they had all of the drawings of her that were being published in the newspaper. And so she wasn't even considered a person, really.
Yeah.
Nobody was like,
she was a martyr for this,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why are we forcing someone to live 26 years on a lonely island?
They don't care. They
No.
care that they got justice for those people without ever knowing her side of the story.
Yeah. And so she was probably kind of chosen as this, this person that the tabloids and the health department were going to go after because she was an immigrant woman with low socioeconomic status who was not particularly feminine. She had like broad shoulders and a tough exterior.
And maybe an undifferentiated jaw. Isn't that what they say? Undifferentiated mouth and jaw. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. And she also had a thick Irish accent that she could never drop. So she could never get an American accent, she couldn't get away from that. That's probably why she was so targeted, because when you look at it, compared to Tony over here, she had way less cases and less deaths associated with her. And most of the ones that she was associated with can't necessarily be proven because the only person that actually proved that was sober.
Yeah. And like prove is a strong word, especially when you were saying it was actually thought that it was the shoe whatever person. Then it was actually the footman. And then it was actually thought that it was the laundress.
Laundress, yeah.
And so, if other people had suspicions, like, I don't know, the beginning of the story is really rough for me because I'm like, I don't know if that really makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the hospital, you could say that was like going back and working for hospitals is probably not the best, but you also think hospitals generally have more hygiene requirements, but maybe not at that time for the
Probably not
cooks.
in the early 1900s.
And so, yeah, I mean, that one is a little rough, but like also patients can be sick, other employees can be sick.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to pinpoint to one single person. And I just can't believe that they were like, you're just going to live here on this island forever now. And then she died alone.
Which is so sad.
Yeah. And then I think during her funeral, which I believe she was buried on this island, the only people that came were the doctor that was working in the laboratory and her daughter came because they liked her. Those were the only two people, no family, nothing.
I mean, family probably had no idea where she actually was.
I mean,
They
they
don't have the same resources.
well, they might have known and seen it in the tabloids, but then didn't want to become associated because they didn't want to lose their own status in America.
Yeah.
Or lose work to be associated with her, which is unfortunate. So basically, the Department of Health kind of ruined her life. I think it's a mix of she did not believe that she could be sick because she was not sick and she didn't have an understanding of what that even meant or how that worked. So she was just kind of like, they're after me.
Yeah.
And I got to make a living, and this is what I know how to do.
Yeah.
Been doing it since I was 15.
And I think it all comes down to I have to make a living and it's the only thing I know how to do. It's the only thing I'm trained in. I'm 37 years old and it's, quote, too late for me to do something else. I mean, people think that nowadays at 37 years old, despite the fact that we have much longer life expectancies and people pivot careers all the time. So imagine back then when you have no resources, no family, you're never going to get through a trade school, you know?
Yeah, I also like that she was given a job as a laundress, and then like these guys got fancy jobs in hospitals.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm like, okay, she had to just do laundry. And I'm pretty sure, I'd have to look it up, but I'm pretty sure like being a laundress was like the worst job ever.
Yeah.
Not maybe ever, but you know, it was definitely low on the list.
Yeah. I'm sure some of it was for punishment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is the story of Mary Mallon.
Wow.
Also known as Typhoid Mary.
Never had heard of this before now.
Yep. And we'll share it, but there's a lot of articles, newspaper articles and pictures, drawings, caricatures of her, and like warnings of look out.
Yeah. Which is sad, like you said, because then people stop thinking of her as a person and think of her more as a thing, a martyr,
someone to pin your problems on.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
on that fun note.
Yeah. Now that we're all pumped up this Friday morning.
Yeah. Check out our show notes to find our link tree where you can find everything in one place. Where to listen, we're almost anywhere you can get your podcasts. How to support us, which is at buymeacoffee.com and is super duper helpful for us to keep this going. And check out our Amazon storefront from here. If you want to see anything else, any groups of things like what I take to work with me in my bag every day, things that got me through PA school, more books that we've referenced in the podcast that we forgot to put in, things like that, just let us know. And best way to support us is by interacting with our content. So leave a review, leave a comment, and share our podcast and interact with us on social media so we can meet more people.
Yeah. More listeners. We need them. If you have an idea for an episode or a case, go ahead and DM us on social media. We want to talk about what you want to hear. If you have a fun/interesting story, personal story about a healthcare experience, about Typhoid Mary, I don't know, maybe a grandparent knew her, the situation. If you have something, send it our way, and we'd love to put together a collaboration of stories for an episode to share with you guys. Next, we are doing...
next we got syphilis.
Syphilis.
Yeah, which has actually been super interesting to learn why it's so prevalent and becoming more and more prevalent. And kind of people assume that because, I believe off the top of my head, HIV, because that's becoming more and more well controlled, that people don't have to worry about syphilis. And it's like, oh, no. These are two different things.
They're not the same.
Yeah. But you'll hear more on the podcast next week.
Yeah. So keep listening, keep spreading the good word, and...
Class is dismissed.
Stay safe.
Stay curious.
And don't try this at home.
Unless you own a bone saw.
Wash your hands.
Wash your hands. 20 seconds. Get the fingertips and the thumbs. Okay, my friends?
You got it.
Have a good weekend, guys.
Bye.
This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. We discuss the history of medicine, not your personal medical situation. Nothing you hear on this show should ever be taken as medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Some of the information discussed may be incorrect or become outdated over time. We do our best to stay current with medical knowledge, but medicine changes quickly. Additionally, because we do not work in every specific field we discuss, there may be times when we misspeak or misinterpret information. We're all human and we're doing our best for the podcast. Every medical case is unique, and your health decisions should always be made in consultation with your own qualified healthcare professional. If you have any questions or concerns about your health, please reach out to a licensed provider who can give you guidance based on your individual needs.